Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today, Data and Perception, How American Cancer Society Uses Surveys to Increase Engagement. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. So all callers will be muted. If you have questions, you should see a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll be monitoring those questions as we go along. If you lose your internet connection, you can reconnect using the link that was emailed to you. If you have to drop off early or if you want to watch the webinar again, we'll be posting the webinar on our website at TechSoup.org/community/events-webinars. We'll also be sending an email with the presentation, the recording, and any relevant links. If you're on social media, feel free to tweet at us at TechSoup using hashtag TSWebinars. But like I said earlier, we'll be using the Q&A that you see at the bottom. All right, so just a little bit about TechSoup before we get started. We are located in 236 countries and territories. We serve over 1.1 million nonprofits offering donated or discounted technologies. We partner with several technology companies like Adobe, Intuit, Microsoft, and several more that you see here. If you're interested in finding out if your nonprofit is eligible for our discount or donations, you can go to the URL that you see here. And then also my colleague, Stephen, who's helping on the back end, he'll be messaging out this link as well. We also have a partnership with Question Pro, who's going to be presenting today. So if you're interested after the webinar in learning more about their program, Stephen will also be sending this out as well. All right. So I just want to make sure you guys can see the Q&A box, and I want to test it out. So if you guys don't mind just typing in where you're calling in from, and I'll read a few of them out before we get started, and that you guys can hear me okay too. So if you just want to type in the questions box, I can just read those out. All right, we have someone from Portland, Oregon, Hudson, Massachusetts. We have San Francisco, California, Burlington, Iowa, Atlanta. All right, great. So it sounds like you guys are calling in from all over, and you can hear me okay. So I'm going to go ahead and make introductions. So my name is Seema Tucker, and I'm the content manager at TechSoup. I have my colleague, Stephen Davidson, and he's a marketing coordinator, and he'll be working on the back end. And then today's main presenters are Vivek Bhaskaran with Question Pro, and he's the founding member and executive chairman of Question Pro. And he's the Chief Executive Officer, and he plays a key role in defining the company strategy and using technology and innovation continuously to maintain its leadership in the industry. We also have Alpa Patel, who's with Cancer Prevention Studies. Alpa serves as the principal investigator of the Cancer Prevention Study 3, CPS 3, and provides strategic oversight for the study and biospecimen management team and all study operations. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Vivek.
Thank you, Seema. Thank you, Seema. So thank you, everybody, for joining. We have an interesting webinar today, and I'm super excited to kind of present some of our kind of relationship with cancer.org, as well as kind of talk a little bit about data. How do you collect data? How do you analyze data? And how do you kind of make sense of it? That's the kind of overarching goal for the webinar today. A little bit about the company itself. So we were founded in 2005. So from tech company standards, I guess we are 15 years old. I was one of the founders there. I was born in India. Then I went to Moscow. Then I went to Provo, Utah. I did my schooling there. Lived in Seattle for about 11 years. Then the San Francisco Bay Area for 8 years. And I'm a new transplant to Austin. So that's been my journey for the last 15, 20 years, I guess. And I'm going to hand it over to Alpa to kind of give her the so that she can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alpa Patel, and I'm with the American Cancer Society in our research department. And we've been working with Question Pro on how to really expand our different types of data collection within these large cancer prevention studies, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, but excited to share a little bit about how we're using this in the health space to generate some ideas for how it can be used in other platforms.
Awesome. Thank you. So before we jump in, I'm going to broadcast the stream. Hopefully everybody can see my screen right now. Can you double check? Can everybody see my screen right now?
Yes.
Seema, can you? Okay. Okay, I want you guys to take your phones and go to questionpro.io. We're going to take a little live quiz right now and type in 2149. And I should see you guys. Use your phone to just go to questionpro.io and, but I should see you guys right now. I'm going to give you guys.
So just to clarify, we just type in questionpro.io into our...
Yeah, on your phones, Yeah, okay, yeah, on your phone. And let's see if I can make this work. You should see a screen. Esther's there. Alpa's there. I should see you in a minute. Just use your phones to kind of jump in. I'm going to give you guys... All right, Seema's here. Rune, Tim, all right. Karthik, Dean, Aisha. Good, we got a few people coming in. We'll give them Sherry. So we're going to go through a little a trivia exercise. This is kind of a little bit of a new thing that I'm doing, generally going through a trivia exercise before we do a webinar, just to get everybody kind of warmed up, frankly. So we'll get started. So first question is, what's the most visited site for new cancer patients? You should see the screen on your answer on your phones, and you can jam that in there. Obviously, since I created the trivia, I know the answers to the questions, so choose whatever is appropriate. All right. Yeah, you only have 15 seconds to answer, so Alpha obviously got it. So interesting thing that we do is the faster you answer the question, the more points you get. So next time you gotta wait for the question and jump on the answer. So how many nonprofits does Question Pro work with? All right. So you should see the answer if you can. If you can, guess that. Obviously, I know the answer to the question. So we have 2 more seconds remaining, and yeah, it's 600. That's the correct answer. Aaron's got it right so far. He's number 1. All right. The ACS offers, what are the following services do they offer? Free lodging, rights to treatment, 24/7 support, all of the above. I think this is kind of a cheating question, but anyway, we have 3 more seconds to answer the question. Let's see. Yep, most of us got it right over here. Yep. All of the above, really. This is a little tongue-in-cheek. Hey, me, Alpa, and Seema, where are we from? Ethnicity, at least. I think we're all Americans, but where are we originally from, I guess? That's the question. So, boom, most of you guys got it right. There you go. Now the thing about trivia, about TechSoup, when was it founded? So you should know, the TechSoup people should know the answer to that question, but let's see, I'll give it another 2 seconds, and 1987, yes, half of us got it right and half of us got it wrong. Final question. What countries does this, you should know the answer to this question because I think Seema just went over it. And I think we are, boom, I think we're done. There we go. So I think we got all of it. Yes. No, it's everywhere. Few people didn't get it right. It's everywhere. They're in every country on the planet. That's what we talked about. And Aaron wins the game. So that's a little trivia exercise for all of us. Most of us have Apple phones and some of us Android phones. All right. That's kind of an interesting data point for us. We'll talk a little bit about data. Let me just stop my screen share and go back to our slides. Talking about data. So the way we think about the assuming you guys can see go back to the slides, correct? Seema, can you confirm we are seeing the slides now?
I think we're good. If you guys, if you guys can't see the screen, just let us know in the Q&A, and I'll let you know if you guys.
Okay. Okay, perfect, awesome. So let's talk about data. We just did a quick exercise. Obviously, we shared some data, we collected some data. You guys all saw it. You guys are a part of it. Obviously, it was a little bit of tongue-in-cheek thing, trying to understand the audience. As you can imagine, we could have asked any number of different questions. We could have asked whether you're male or female, or we could have asked any number of different questions, right? So we look at from our perspective, we look at data as a strategic asset. And when you start looking at data as an asset, you start thinking about, collecting as much data as you can, because you can leverage data to make decisions, ultimately. So that's kind of the ultimate kind of goal for research, is to make decisions, make informed decisions. And when you start looking from that perspective, then you start becoming, quite frankly, guys like me and Alpa, we're becoming a data wonk. We kind of want to collect more and more data because we believe we can, obviously improve our decision-making skills the more data that we have. And then, so what are some of the characteristics? If you say, like, okay, we kind of get it, data is important. Data can help us make decisions, better decisions, smarter decisions, more productive decisions. What are the characteristics, right? And here are some examples of kind of what we consider kind of a data-driven organization, that there's a natural level of curiosity. So it's not like, hey, we're going to just do this because we feel like doing it. They're like, okay, a lot of questions around, should we do this or should we do that? Why should we do this? Give me some intelligence behind decision making. So that is a data-driven organization. And once you start collecting data, the question of, you'll have multiple sources of data. You could have behavioral data, you have attitudinal data, you have different kinds of data. In the context of surveys, obviously, more often than not, you're collecting attitudinal data. You're trying to figure out what people think. That is a kind of, in a simplistic way of determining what a survey really does, is it gives you the ability to kind of peer into people's heads at scale. That's kind of a simple definition, at least my simple definition of what a survey does. And in many cases, sometimes it's attitudinal data. Sometimes you can even collect kind of behavioral data. A lot of health science folks use surveys to collect just kind of what people are doing for patient-reported outcomes and so on and so forth. So, the third thing is really kind of, if you are truly a data-driven organization, people look at data and maybe not worship data, but definitely kind of value it up and down the chain. Not just the data analysts, but folks at the decision-making level, at the executive level, also believe that data-driven decisions are important and data-driven decisions are relevant, if you will. And so, what does that really mean in terms of kind of creating a data-driven organization, or at least kind of aspiring to be one realistically? The first thing that the way I look at it is defining your research objectives is very important. A lot of times we just I've seen organizations start doing things for the sake of doing things without thinking about why they're doing it. Even the fact that they're collecting data itself, there should be a why behind things. So I generally kind of say, like, hey, look, if you don't have the answer to the why question, it's going to be reasonably challenging over the course of time to kind of figure out even if a program is successful or not. So even spend some time thinking about why you need to do it. Just not let's say if somebody comes up in the office and says, hey, look, we need to do a survey at the end of our volunteering program. Why is the first question. Like, okay, so that we can make it better, or do you want to do a survey? Do you want to make it better, or do we just want to understand how things are going, so that we can increase our participation pool? Is it because you want to increase your volunteer size? So there's lots of kind of debate over there as to why you even want to collect data. And if you have that information up front, and you have that, at least you have that discussion up front, it'll be good. Next is how you actually go about doing it does matter. Obviously, we provide a pretty reasonably easy interface for online surveys. Fairly straightforward. We have, like I said, we have over 600 nonprofits using Question Pro, and they come in, they use it for all kinds of different things. Starting from stakeholder participation to volunteer employee engagement, as well as kind of disseminating outcomes. We've had, during the Ebola virus, we've had a bunch of nonprofits in Africa using Question Pro to collect data about kind of patients, to map out kind of, how the symptoms were spreading, and what kind of symptoms we were getting. So in terms of data collection, we obviously, how you ask, what you ask does matter, and we, obviously at Question Pro provide pretty, we stick to the technology side, and not much more than that, realistically. The next thing I want to talk about is and I'll probably talk a lot more about it, is really demonstrating that you kind of your relationship with the participants. More often than not, if you kind of start thinking about, okay, this is the data I need to collect, but also put yourself in the participant's shoes, and think about how they perceive you. And you have to demonstrate to them that you have a relationship with them, you understand their needs, not just, obviously shoveling a survey down to people. So, here are some kind of, bullet points that you can think about in terms of, especially I kind of harp a lot on sharing the data with your constituents. Even if it's patients, or even if it is kind of customers, I share a lot of data with my customers, and you can see it, right? I mean, just as we went through that, the polling exercise that we just went through, it was interesting to see, not only how you responded, but in the context of how everybody else in the room responded. So that is a kind of a small demonstration of, sharing the data, not just collecting it. If I just got the data and produced, a PowerPoint deck and sent it to somebody else, it wouldn't mean the same. But I actually shared the data back with you guys, to say, hey, look, this is what, half of the guys, half of 75% of us use iPhones, and the 25% use Android phones. So interesting data point that I shared back with you, not just collected it and moved on with my life. So think about, that's kind of an important element. And kind of going down the same path is trust is built through transparency. Obviously, we all know that. And in our mind, I would strongly encourage, as you kind of embark on some sort of a data collection journey, you've got to be transparent with your constituents, both in terms of why you're collecting the data, what are you going to do with the data, but also sharing the data. I strongly believe in that. I think it builds, just sharing the data, builds credibility, builds trust, builds dependability. The next time I ask you to do something, now, we are that much more inclined to do it. So those are the kind of, elements that surface, if you can build this trust through transparency. And I'm going to wrap it up by saying, when do you do this, right? I mean, obviously based on your need, I want to figure out, I want to make a decision, I need this data, but also kind of think about, the timing with respect to your audience, right? So, do you run a survey, right when an employee is onboarded, or do you run a survey when an employee is offboarded? So these are kind of interesting questions that you at least think about in terms of what timing makes sense, as opposed to saying hey, I need to do this yesterday. You have to kind of think about look, should we do this yesterday? Typically, for example, in an employee scenario, an onboarding survey within 1 day is kind of, usually not that productive. You got to let the employee come on board for at least a week, and then you do a 30-day check-in, and they do a 60-day check-in. So these are not very complicated ideas, but just what I would like to kind of at least kind of propose that you think about when. Over to
Thanks, Vivek. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some work that we're doing with Question Pro to think differently about the ways in which we collect data to increase engagement in some of our research studies. So I think many of you may be familiar with the ACS, but we are a nationwide community-based volunteer health organization focused on eliminating cancer as a major health concern in the population. We're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, and again, though we are nationwide, now actually have an international presence with a lot of global initiatives all over the world as well through our global arm. And our ultimate mission is to save lives, celebrate lives, and to lead the fight against cancer. So we have been doing a number of very large-scale studies. You can see here that dating back to the 1950s, we've engaged over 2.5 million individuals in large-scale health-related studies. And these studies have been really important in public health to understand the link between a lot of what we're exposed to through lifestyle choices, the environment, other behaviors, and cancer. Dating back to our first findings, which provided some of the earliest evidence linking smoking to lung cancer, we've had a number of significant contributions to understanding what causes cancer and how to potentially prevent it. So we do these studies by assembling very large groups of individuals, and historically what we've done is we've actually used paper surveys that we send to individuals, and they update lifestyle and medical information and they send it back to us. But obviously we have an opportunity now to leverage technology solutions to really innovate and expand the types of data that we can collect. So back in 2006, we actually built our most recent study, which is just over 300,000 people across the country, and it's called Cancer Prevention Study 3. And we were, quote-unquote, innovative in that we offered now, instead of just a paper survey, an online survey tool as well. Just for reference, although I'm speaking to a tech audience here, this is at a time when, this was 2 years before the first iPhone was released. So the opportunity to do more expanded data collection like what we can do today wasn't really front of mind when we were building the study. So now we're really looking at how can we take some of the models of data collection that we've done traditionally and really accelerate data collection and expand it in really creative ways. And that's what landed us in this relationship with QuestionPro, is to develop a strategy to build a community that's hosted by QuestionPro, and that community would be of members of our CPS3 study. So we would invite participants to come and share a wide range of information with us. So what we've been able to do, and we're going to do full launch of this in about a month, is we've created this community that has secure access, and we're calling it a participant portal. But people can come in and not only get the types of information that they would have gotten more traditionally through cancer.org about the study, but they're now also able to complete a number of different types of tasks. So they can do that survey collection that we historically have done as the backbone of our data collection. So we have the opportunity to do that. But we're also now doing new things to engage these participants. They can report new cancer diagnoses, and Vivek mentioned that there's a lot of different types of health data that you can collect in terms of patient-reported outcomes, so we can collect those types of data, which we didn't have a mechanism to do well before. And we can also collect non-survey type data through these communities, such as strength tests using things like a sit-stand video test. So there's a lot of functionalities that go beyond that traditional paper and pencil or online survey that is a standalone survey on its own through this community platform. And then it's great that we have this cloud-based data collection and function that supports the community, that allows us to then also apply a lot of different analytics to these types of data. So we're really excited about how this will open up and expand the types of scientific research that we can do, and are also looking at how we can use this to also, in other capacities, understand our volunteer experiences and do other types of customer experience type survey data collection as well. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Vivek.
Awesome. Thank you. Also, I do have a question, right? Are you guys planning through the portal also kind of distributing some of the data that you collect and analysis of that back to the study participants? How
Yes.
can you talk about that?
With research studies, there's a lot of additional oversight and biomedical ethics review that happens. So we're bound by what we've told participants we will do, but we will share aggregate results back with participants, and that's something, again, that we haven't been able to do. So historically, the only way in which we've shared information back with our participants is either by putting things on cancer.org, which is available, of course, to the public. So we're really limited in what we can share. And then we do quarterly newsletters by email and once a year mailed newsletter. So very few touch points to engage our participants. So this type of community will dramatically enhance the way in which we can engage our participants.
Awesome. Thank you. And everybody, if there are questions that you feel like pushing out there, just type in the questions, and we can just answer them as we go along, and I think Seema can catch them and read them out to us. I want to switch gears a little bit and then just talk a little bit about very practical applications. Okay, so data is important. Sharing data is important. Where do we get started? If you are wondering how to get started, where to get started. So one of the things that we do at QuestionPro, we've done, and frankly, this is the second time I'm talking about it, is not only do we provide the technology platform, but we've also kind of created a bunch of templates for you guys, for everybody. These are pretty standardized templates that we've kind of, we have a large template library as part of our platform. And then we kind of, I think it was 6 months ago, we decided, okay, let's just go kind of design, 10 or 15 surveys as if, and put our heads in your shoes and say, okay, if we were to do let's say an event participation survey or donor kind of analysis survey, how do we do that? And so we've created all these kind of, templates. They're all available through that URL over there that you see on the screen. And we probably send the link to this, Aaron can send the link to this also when he sends the link to the deck, or you'll have the deck and the link is inside the deck. And you can go there and there are 10 or 15 survey templates. You can use that. And like Seema said, we've been partnering up with nonprofits for quite a while. And it's, frankly, free for you guys, nearly free for you guys to use the platform itself. And that's about it. I think if there are any questions, we can definitely go through a Q&A session. I'll just pause over here. Seema, are there any questions that have come up?
Yeah, so if you guys want to just go ahead and populate your questions in the Q&A. So I'll just go ahead and get started with the first, question. So a lot of our organizations are pretty small, so 5 people or less. In terms of, what you see on your side, Vivek or Alpha, in terms of where to get started and what type of data, people should prioritize, do you guys have any recommendations in terms of what type of surveys are probably the best to start with?
From my perspective,
I'll jump in.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Seema. Sorry. Yeah. So I'll jump in. So my thought around what to prioritize would be, if you look at the lifeblood of smaller nonprofit organizations, it's going to be either fundraising and or kind of proving the outcomes. And one of the things that we've done reasonably successfully, I think, is kind of using surveys to kind of prove the outcome that you're trying to get to. Clearly, different nonprofits have different kind of missions across. It's obviously as varied as it gets, and the thing that's why surveys are reasonably helpful is because obviously nonprofits are not profit driven; they're mission driven, and if you're part of a mission driven organization, trying to prove that you're doing the right thing is kind of reasonably challenging. If you're trying to do something, for me, it's reasonably easy. I run a for-profit corporation. If my revenue goes up, I can go back to my board and say, look, the revenue went up by 18%. Whereas if I was running a nonprofit, there is no kind of like objective metric per se, especially for governments and mission-driven organizations. So using surveys, that's where I would focus on. Going back to your question, Seema, like what kind of surveys I would really focus on, like, hey, something that proves the fact that we are doing the right thing, and that's where I would focus on. Seema, go for it.
Oh, Alta, I think, did you have a response also?
Oh, sorry.
I was actually going to say something very similar, but I would also say that, with mission-driven organizations in the nonprofit space, making sure that not only is the mission being achieved, it's also about how people feel about their contributions to that mission. And so that customer experience or volunteer experience is something that we focus on heavily and do a lot of data collection around post any sort of events or engagement of individuals with our organization. We're routinely looking for data to be able to improve experiences in the future.
Gotcha. Okay. So the next question is, in terms of like actually administering the surveys, I guess, Alta, maybe if you want to start, like where have you seen the most success in terms of getting responses, and is it like through email, or is it, pushing something out on social media, or I guess, maybe in healthcare it's probably different, but if you want to just share kind of where you've seen some success.
So we actually, because again of that ethical review that we have, we aren't allowed to use social media to reach out, although I know that that's a very common and effective channel to reach out. We have found that email does work really well, especially when you have the ability to embed a link directly to that survey that you want people, they can click straight through. The easier you make it to get people there, we've found that seems to work very well. And just for perspective, we have 300,000 people in this study, and we have about 80% return every survey that we touch them with.
Yeah, that's the one thing that always, at least coming from the commercial world, surprises me. And I've done a lot of public policy work with transportation commissions, nonprofits. The response rates in these things are reasonably high, at least compared to commercial. So partly because kind of the nonprofit and the mission-driven nature of the organizations itself tends to kind of make people kind of obviously think about donating their time to make sure that nonprofits can do a better job at whatever they're trying to do. 80%, like Alpa says, is kind of in a commercial context is obviously unheard of. It's more like 1/10 that is what commercial companies get. But clearly there's a larger purpose, and I think going back to kind of Seema's point around, what works, I think email works really well, and the context of framing the reason, if that context is reasonably strong, then I think things work out really well. I've done a ton of work with the Washington State, for example, the Washington State Transportation Commission. They're the commission responsible for transit in the Seattle area. And we used to get the same, almost like 60-70% of the folks were responding, and because we all care about transit, we all care about what kind of roads and tolls and we want in our communities. So I think that's a leverage, frankly, for nonprofits, that you can have a list, and you will get pretty good data and pretty good response rates from your internal email list.
Awesome. Okay. So we just got another question from Amanda. She said, you mentioned using non-traditional survey tools, paper, pencils, online email newsletters. What other unique tools have you used?
So I'm assuming that I know that. Okay. So for us, we've used a lot of, we've done video tests to be able to capture things that people need to watch and then be able to report. We've also done a lot of device-based collection. So collecting, for instance, Fitbit data and so on, so things that people can easily share with us that don't require filling out a survey. So there's those types of opportunities, and the nice thing about the Question Pro platform is that we've been able to explore some open API plugins to be able to, with relative ease, bring some of those types of other data sources in as well.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of kind of interesting data sources, one of the projects that I was involved in, it was with the California, it was UC Davis in California, and they had a tobacco research study going on, and we kind of, expanded our app to do what we call passive data collection. So a group of users were recruited, and we were monitoring their entrance and exits into what they call quick convenience stores, stuff like 7-Eleven and things like that, in terms of where people are buying and advertising for tobacco-related products. And that was not where you were asking, hey, did you go to 7-Eleven today, but more like we were actually inferring based on location, based on latitude and longitude. We were monitoring about a group of 150 or 200 individuals with their consent and see if any advertising changed their behavior. So it's not just survey, but I think there are kind of interesting video-based data that Alpha talked about. There are different forms of data collection. And surveys just obviously happen to be one of them, but passive data collection is also an interesting one. I don't think it's done very widely because it's actually fairly challenging to do it. It's not easy. It's not obvious. You got to get participants to agree to it. You got to recruit the participants. So it's a fairly laborious and kind of complex kind of project. But again, the outcomes of that are also interesting because now you're getting kind of data, behavioral data along with it. That is super interesting.
Perfect. Okay. We have another question here. So what are your recommendations regarding the length of the survey? At what length do you see a significant decline in participation? So maybe Vivek, if you want to speak on the aggregate level, and then Alpha, you can kind of talk about your own experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a length perspective, it's very typical. Once you start spending more than 3 to 5 minutes on a particular project or respondent, I would also kind of caution that. I've had this question many times. It really depends upon context. Frankly, like if you are taking a survey in the context of you are a trainee and your nonprofit is sending you a post-volunteer satisfaction survey. My expectation is it's within 1 minute, frankly. And if it's a 50-question survey after I volunteered to an organization, I probably am not going to fill it out. If it's a 3-question survey after I did some volunteering work, I probably will fill it out. So I would kind of caution. It's kind of contextual to what the event was, and that's my opinion. So there's no kind of typical consultant response. There's no one size fits all, or it kind of answer is it depends, and it depends upon the context. That's what I'm trying to explain. Is that if the context is like they spend some time with you and you need to collect some little bit of feedback around how the experience was, keep it short. If there was a deep engagement and they know that a deep survey is coming, that's also fine. I think a lot of school districts over here have used kind of a deeper engagement model where they kind of prep the parents and say like, look, we want you to spend 15 minutes around this because we need the intelligence to make the decisions about what kind of programs to run. And as long as we prep people up, I think we get reasonably good response rates without prepping, and that could include even a series of campaigns of emails saying that, hey, we're going to launch this thing, and these are things we're going to talk about, and then the next time we're going to launch it on Friday, and then finally you launch it. So those kind of prep work usually help with increasing response rates.
So I would definitely agree with that there's not a one-size-fits-all. I think if there was, it would be the shorter the better. But I think it's really about context and what people expect and whether or not the survey is longer than what they're expecting, and then value. There's definitely, our longest surveys can take about an hour to complete, but these are individuals that are very committed to helping understand issues related to cancer, so if they feel that there is value in the questions that they're being asked, they are very patient with completing those. But we do quickly run into points of frustration when people don't understand why we're asking something. So I think the more that there is an understanding of what's being asked of an individual and what that time expectation is, the more compliance there will be to completing things.
Okay. We have another question here. So are all surveys taken on the Question Pro website, or can we embed them as an iframe in our own website? So I guess, Vivek, from a branding perspective, how much can you customize?
If you know how to put an iframe on your website, you should be able to do it. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You can take and put the same URL on an iframe on your website, and you can do it that way. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Answer. It's a technical short answer. So yes.
Yeah.
The short answer is yes.
Okay. I don't see any more questions coming in. I'm going to give everyone just a couple, like a minute if they want to ask any more questions. Otherwise, we can go ahead and close out. Vivek, Alpa, did you want to add anything, or shall we go ahead and close out today?
Oh, thank you, Seema.
Thank you. I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and close out today. So if you guys don't mind, in the Q&A box, if you want to chat one thing that you learned in today's webinar, it's always fun for our presenters to see if you learned something new. We also have a post-event survey, so any feedback that you have for us is always really helpful. We look at it pretty closely, and we definitely take that into consideration when curating future content. If you're on social media, feel free to give us a follow. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we post there quite frequently. We try to offer helpful tips and tricks and things like that. Same as our blog. If you go to blog.techsoup.org, you can get information there as well. And then also, I'm going to scroll back up to the top. If you guys are interested in Question Pro, you can go to TechSoup.org/QuestionPro to get more information on the TechSoup and Question Pro offer. And then you have to be qualified by TechSoup, and then you're eligible for the program. We have some webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks, so if you're interested in joining, you can find us on our website and register there. We also offer TechSoup courses and TechSoup services. If you're interested in doing a deeper dive in topics like Google Analytics or Facebook advertising, we do offer several topics, and if you're interested in taking a course, we offer 10% off for our webinar attendees, and we'll be sending out this coupon code in our follow-up email to today's webinar. And lastly, I just want to thank Vivek and Alpa for presenting today, and then also Stephen, Esther, and Aaron, who are helping on the back end, and also to our webinar sponsor, Global Meet. And that's all for today, and thank you all for attending.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.